and welcome to Among the Jungle podcast. I'm botanist and host, Shii Kaina, and I'd love for you to join me as I interview the incredible plant people of Instagram to create an audio vault of inspiring botanical knowledge while harnessing a deeper connection with us in our natural world. If you're ready, it's time to inspire your wild. Aloha, jungle dwellers! It's so great to be back in your ear and to be sharing all the exciting content I have in store for you this season. A lot has been going on behind the scenes over here, including a new recording space under construction, an incredibly fun and informative spring conference at the Botanical Garden, workshop and education planning, garden planning and seed ordering for our own home garden, and of course, expanding my love of bees and pollinators through an inspiring beekeeping class I started taking. I launched this podcast at the end of September last year, and I'm just amazed how many of you have tuned in, and I'm just so grateful for such positive feedback from the community. Yet, there is so much more I want to share with you. I have over a decade's worth of botanical knowledge just swirling around in my brain and a heart swelled with green. And in an effort to share it all with you, I intend to start mixing solo casts on some of my most passionate plant subjects with our already engaging guest interviews. Starting with this very episode. It's my hope that this will give you a variety of information on subjects not yet explored, through the stories, voices, and experiences of us wild folk who are unabashedly in love with plants. I'm also so excited to share that you can now support this podcast and the planet through Patreon. For $2 a month, you can support our mission to plant 5,000 trees this year. That's right, in 2020, we intend to plant 5,000 trees with this podcast. Find Among the Jungle podcast on Patreon or head to our website at amongthejungle.com for our Patreon, show notes, freebies, and to learn more about this season's cause, the Australian wildfires. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being a part of this amazing community. Thank you for sharing this podcast with your plant friends, and thank you for your growing support. Thank you for your kind messages on Instagram, and thank you for loving plants. Now, if you're ready to dive into today's topic, we're journeying to Australia, Agricultural Zone 8A to 10B, to explore the history of their incredibly exotic flora and to uncover which little bits of its rich native flora you may have growing in your very own living room. Today we will learn how Australia's fauna and flora has evolved into such exotic species, common household plants native to Australia, and how you can support Australia through bushfires and beyond. Welcome, friends, to the jungle. I'm so excited to talk about Australia with you all today. While creating this episode, I was surprised to discover just how exotic Australia really is. You see, 180 million years ago, Australia broke apart from Gondwana, an ancient supercontinent that was comprised of Australia, Antarctica, parts of Southeast Asia, South America, and Africa. To keep the story as simple as possible, basically, Australia has been bouncing around in the middle of the ocean between Antarctica and Southeast Asia ever since. So, as you can imagine, the movement from one extreme to the other has created one of the most biologically and botanically diverse continents in the entire world. Being isolated for millions of years allowed the evolution of strange new life to take place, making most of what grows in Australia endemic, meaning native only to that particular region. The Aboriginal Australians, or the Aborigines, were the first peoples to arrive in Australia, and they arrived by sea around 60,000 years ago. Their art, music, and spiritual traditions are among the longest surviving in human history. The first British fleet arrived to colonize Australia in 1788, and guess where they landed? Botany Bay, or modern-day Sydney. And speaking of botany, I'm going to share a few facts with you that you may or may not know about Australia's flora. The first is that 85% of Australia's plants are endemic, or as we noted earlier, native only to that continent. Golden wattle, or Acacia pycnantha, is the country's flower. Australia's tree flora is dominated by a single genus, eucalyptus, and that tree does come in many varieties, only a few of which actually sustain koala bear populations. They also have more than 800 kinds of orchids, mostly epiphytes, a term we frequently hear used in relation to aroids. But an epiphyte is an organism that grows on the surface of another plant, typically using that plant for stability and derives moisture and nutrients from the air, rain, water, and debris that collect and form around it. Australia also has over 250,000 kinds of fungi and over 35,000 vascular and non-vascular plants, making the country's flora one of its most prized and valuable assets. For those of you who are curious, vascular plants are plants that have tube-like structures that provide support, as well as contain xylem and phloem cells that help transport water and food throughout the plant. Vascular plants also have true roots, stems, and leaves. Examples would be most of the herbaceous plants growing in your house, trees, shrubs, and grasses. Now for non-vascular plants. Non-vascular plants get nutrients direct from the environment and transfer them from cell to cell, keeping the size of the plant very small. They have no true roots, stems, or leaves. Examples would be mosses and liverwort. Now that you have a better idea about the wonderful plants that come from Australia, let's take a look around your own home and see if any of these Australian beauties that I'll be mentioning in this next section are green girls in your own collection. I totally did not mean for that to rhyme, but we don't make mistakes around here, just happy accidents. Now let's talk houseplants. The first plant on my list of amazing houseplants native to Australia is the bird's nest fern, Asplenium species. Asplenium grows at the base of large branches and has the unique ability to trap water and develop its own store of humus. How weird is that? Its curled up emerging new growth resembles bird's eggs, and that's how it got its common name, bird's nest fern. Number 2 on my list is the cycad, or macrozamia, dating all the way back 280 million years. Remember, that's all the way back to when Gondwana broke up. But also, this is when dinosaurs roamed the earth. This particular plant, the giant cycad, does not produce flowers. Instead, it has male and female reproductive organs develop on separate plants. This is what we call dioecious. Number 3, pulling up on my list, is the glorious pothos, Epeprem nemorium, commonly misidentified by hobbyists in the wild when visiting tropical places as a variegated monstera. This is also an epiphytic plant. We learned about that term earlier. And although commonly seen growing in hanging baskets, this plant would definitely prefer to be growing upright up a tree or pole instead. Coming up as number 4 on the list is the staghorn fern, Platycerium species. Some botanists believe that this plant is a transition plant between modern and ancient ferns. How freaking cool is that? The plant produces 2 distinctly different fronds, a basal frond and a foliar frond. The basal fronds, often called sterile fronds, are rounded, thickened fronds which typically turn brown and grow in overlapping layers, and this is what clasps the plant onto a growing surface. Foliar fronds are the ones that come out green and fingered and are the true leaves of the plant. Rolling up as number 5 on the list is the umbrella tree, Flora actinophylla. With its unique foliage and its low light tolerance, this plant has been popular since at least the 60s and 70s. It also can get up to 8 feet indoors. Called an umbrella or octopus plant due to the gorgeous red flowers it produces in the wild. Rolling in at number 6 is the rough maidenhair fern, Adiantum hispidulum. Adiantum is the scientific name of the maidenhair fern. Actually comes from the Greek word adiantos, meaning unwettable, referring to the foliage of the plant that repels water. We learned about this in an Instagram post a couple months back, where I shared on the difference between guttation and dew, and what they were referring to when they meant that the plant was unwettable was actually the guttation that the plant pushed out from inside the plant, which is actually an overflow of xylem, and it pushes that out through the pores of the plant, where dew is water that condenses from the environment and outside sources. Coming in at number 7 is the walking stick palm, Linospadex monostatia. This is one of the most shade-loving palms, as they're used to being the understory to a cool, wet rainforest floor. The genus used to be known as Bacularia, from the Latin term baculum, which means stick or staff. And the actual trunks used to be used for walking sticks, and that's how this plant got its common name. Number 8 is the fan palm, Licuala species. This palm has been rated among the most beautiful of all palms. It's a super important plant for the Aboriginal groups of North Queensland because it's provided them with the ability to thatch and shelter themselves from heavy rains, and they also use it for food wrapping as well as other material purposes. Number 9 is the Droseriaceae family, which includes both pitcher plants, Cephalotus follicularis, and Venus flytrap, Dionaea muscipule. Australia has the world's richest concentration of carnivorous plant floras in the entire world, comprised of over 187 species. Can you believe that? They must have some really bad soil over there in Australia, because the main reason that carnivorous plants eat bugs is due to nutrient-poor soil. But it's also interesting because some predators like spiders and frogs have used the plant to hide and then collect the bugs that are attracted to it. And it's recently been discovered that the Venus flytrap can count. That's right, I said it. The Venus flytrap can count. And seriously, I'm not kidding. This is a legitimate TED Talk. I will add the TED Talk to the show notes, but you can look forward to seeing many future episodes proving plant sentience. Number 10 is the lotus flower, Lotus australis. The pink lotus flower is common along the muddy banks of the Billabong wetlands. This plant is unique as it roots in the mud and then sends a shoot all the way up through the water to eventually kiss the air. The bud will bloom in the early morning and will have dropped by the evening. Because of this, Egyptian mythology believed that the lotus actually birthed the sun. The lotus flower, seeds, young leaves, and rhizomes are all edible, but that makes for a beautiful salad. Number 11 and 12 are the last 2 plants coming in on my list. While those are the top 10 houseplants, the next 2 plants I'm about to talk about, I'm very excited about because I have lots of seeds to share with y'all. These plants are special to people of Australia. Coming in at number 11 on our list is kangaroo paws, Anagoxanthos. These plants are so popular that they are the official floral emblem of Western Australia, where they've grown for literally millions of years. They resemble the paw of an animal and were originally named by the Aborigines, who found them useful for many medicinal practices. Number 12 is billy buttons or billy balls, genus Craspedia. Also known in Australia as woolly heads. It's commonly sought after as a unique cut flower, as it's like a little yellow ball on a perfect stick. It's typically cut and used in floral arrangements, weddings, and dried arrangements because they can be so easily dried and they can last for so long. That's why I'm so excited to share these two types of seeds with you all to spread the love of plants and so you guys can grow some of your own dried flowers this summer. Oh, I could talk the native plants of Australia all day with you because there are some truly exotic and incredible species out there. But I would also like to take a moment to touch on conservation. Australia has been having a rough fall and winter season, and I'm sure by now you've heard of the chaotic wildfires spreading across their beautiful land. 2019 was the hottest and driest year in 120 years of record-taking. As a result, the annual bushfire season, which typically doesn't peak till January, February, started in September, and the blazes fueled by tinder dry conditions have honestly affected areas that have little to no tolerance for wildfires, such as rainforests, marshes, and wet eucalyptus forests. Both the land and the animals here are affected on such a deep level because they are not equipped to escape these type of fires and this severe level of burning. Interesting, during my research, I came across a very special tree. Known as Wallemia nobilis, Walmelia being an Aborigines word for look around you, was a conifer that was only known by fossil records dating back to 200 million years. Nobody had ever seen this tree in person. In 1994, it was discovered, and only a couple of them were found clustered together in this very special area in Australia. Upon discovery, it was considered critically endangered. In December, fires ripped through the secret canyons where it was found in New South Wales, raising the prospect that this species could become extinct again in the wild altogether. This is also where the wildfires have had the most devastating impact on koalas, kangaroos, birds, platypus, and beyond. If you want to learn more about the wildfires in Australia or help contribute to their great reforestation efforts, please visit the website at amongthejungle.com and read the extensive blog I wrote about this topic. There's a link in our Instagram bio as well. The driver here is climate change. It's leading to extended droughts and increased temperatures. Australia is looking at an overall 3 to 4 degrees of warming, and these fires are the culmination of just 1 degree. Thankfully, by supporting this podcast, you can also support the planet and become a large part of plant-based solutions. Check out our Patreon if you'd like to plant trees with us each month. And know that by keeping plants in your home and developing a passion within you, that you're contributing to a huge part of larger conservation efforts. And hopefully now you can look at some of those magical plants around your home with new eyes, knowing it took some of the most extreme obstacles imaginable for them to be exactly what they are today. Just like you and I. And isn't it amazing that we all have that in common? Australia is something else, isn't it? It's so exciting knowing that just by having a bit of their wild flora in your home, that you are a huge part of the conservation of their species. And just by learning more about plants and growing your passion of plants, you are part of the protection of the health and well-being of this planet. Of course, I have a challenge for you this week. I challenge you to discover which plants in your collection are Australia natives and take photos so I can share with the community on Instagram. Be sure to tag us at Among the Jungle Podcast. Of course, be sure to follow Aloha Shii and Among the Jungle Podcast on Instagram. You can find the show notes for this episode at amongthejungle.com/008. Please, 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 please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. And if you learned something new today, it would mean the world to me if you shared this podcast with your favorite plant friends. We're building a righteous community here, and the more amazing plant people, the better. I hope this episode inspired your wild, and I hope you are left fascinated by the magnificent ways plants have adapted to diverse climates over the course of millions of years, and are even able to survive in your own living room. Until next week, jungle dwellers, love, light, and aloha. I am so grateful to the plants that bless this beautiful earth, and to you for choosing to nurture a wild place inside of your heart. I hope this episode inspired your wild, and I'd love to hear your feedback, suggestions for future guests, and other botanical notes at amongthejungle.com or amongthejungle on Instagram. It's been lovely exploring this exotic world with you today, and I look forward to where the journey takes us next week. Mahalo for tuning in, and stay wild.